When I was a child, I attended catechism classes on Saturdays at a church located at the end of the village where we lived. The church stood next to a large plot of land covered with trees, and behind it was an old, disused building that used to be a convent. This building was surrounded by mysterious stories, but we children never paid much attention to such things. During classes, we spent most of our time outdoors, playing and doing activities under the guidance of the nuns who taught the lessons. I remember well one nun, in particular, that I began to notice frequently. She was a strangely pale figure, with dark eyes that seemed to penetrate the soul. This woman would always watch me, especially when we were inside the church. One time, while we were singing and praying, I noticed that she was standing next to the altar, staring at me so intently that it made me feel uncomfortable. When I mentioned her to a friend, he also saw her and suggested that she might be the Mother Superior. Despite the explanation, we both felt that there was something very strange about her presence. The feeling of being watched by her did not end there. During an outdoor class, I looked at the abandoned convent, and there she was, standing in front of the building, looking directly at us. It was impossible to ignore her pale, expressionless face. My friend and I decided to avoid looking in her direction and tried to concentrate on our activities, but the presence of that woman seemed to follow us. When we went back to look for her, she disappeared without a trace, which increased our fear. During a break, while we were playing soccer, the ball was kicked hard and ended up falling near the convent. Since I was the goalkeeper, I was assigned to retrieve it. With each step I took, my nervousness increased, but I knew I could not show fear. However, as soon as I approached the building, something completely paralyzed me. There was the nun, watching me from one of the windows. Her eyes were piercing and left me motionless. I didn't know what to do until my friend's voice brought me back to reality. He came to help me, but even together, we never found the ball. The next day, during Mass, I saw the same nun again, this time standing next to the altar door. When I mentioned this to my mother, she didn't see anything and just scolded me for talking during the celebration. After Mass, while we were talking to other colleagues, one of them said that he had also seen the same nun watching us from the convent. Others confirmed that they were afraid of her, but no one knew who she was. This mystery left us uneasy, and later we decided to investigate on our own. That afternoon, only me, my friend, the owner of the ball, and his older brother had the courage to return to the church. The place was deserted, and the cloudy weather made the atmosphere even more gloomy. We divided into pairs to look for the ball and try to enter the abandoned building. At one point, we heard screams coming from the other side. The other two had seen the nun again, smiling in a macabre way. We decided it was time to leave, but the oldest brother in the group insisted that we stay and try to enter the building. As we forced the doors open without success, we heard the sound of footsteps and then a feminine wail coming from near a large tree next to the building. When we looked over, we saw the figure of the nun hanging from the tree with a rope around her neck. She was smiling, showing dirty, sharp teeth, while on the ground, right below her, was the lost ball. The fright made us run without looking back. After that day, I never wanted to go back to that church. My mother never understood the reason for my fear and insisted that I continue attending catechism. However, years later, when I met my childhood friend again, I discovered that he also had recurring nightmares about the nun. He said that his younger sister, who attended the same church, said she heard voices whispering from the convent. These voices asked them to open a locked door, but when they looked through the windows, they never saw anyone. We then learned of an old story involving a woman named Sophia who was forced to enter the convent, and after facing problems with the Mother Superior, took her own life. Since then, the legend says that her soul was trapped in that place. To this day, this memory haunts me, and I wonder if the figure we saw was really Sophia or something even more sinister. If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel for more content like this and share it with your friends. Many more chilling stories are to come. This is a story that has been passed down through my family, passed down from generation to generation. It is an old story involving a great friend of my grandmother who has since passed away. I never met Donna Helena, but my mother, who met her a few times when she was a child, would often tell this story, always emphasizing how kind and warm a person Donna Helena was. Interestingly, although she was not part of our family, the bond with my grandmother was so strong that my mother and my uncles called her Aunt Helena, as did many who knew her. Donna Helena worked with my grandmother at the old hospital Nossa Senhora da Saúde, in a city known for its mild climate and clean air, ideal for treating respiratory diseases, especially tuberculosis. The hospital, which today functions as an asylum, was run by nuns and, at the time, received patients from various parts of the country. Donna Helena was in charge of the kitchen, and her routine included lighting the wood stove, heating water in large pots, and preparing meals for the nuns and patients. Work started early, and she always got up around 5 in the morning to get ahead on the work. She lived in a simple house in the back of the hospital, as was common for employees at that time. One night, as she herself reported, the heavy chiming of the hospital clock woke her abruptly. Convinced that she had slept past her usual time, she got up quickly, got dressed, and started her usual walk to the kitchen. As she crossed the main corridor, she saw a nun walking in the opposite direction. At first, she didn't pay much attention, imagining that it was already 6 in the morning and that the sisters had gotten up. However, as she passed by the nun, something peculiar caught her attention. The habit she was wearing was not white like the others, but completely black. Furthermore, Donna Helena had never seen that nun before, even after years of working there. The woman's gaze was empty, distant, as if she were trapped in another world. Always polite, Donna Helena murmured a cordial, "Good morning, sister." To her surprise, she received no response, not even a glance. That lack of reaction sent a chill through her body. Intrigued, she immediately looked back, but the hallway was empty. There was no sign that anyone had passed by. Did I see a ghost? She wondered, trying to rationalize what had happened. Despite the fright, she went to the kitchen, turned on the stove and started making coffee. However, she realized that the coffee was out of powder and that she would need to go to the pantry, which was on the other side of the hallway where she had found the nun. Apprehensive, she decided to face her fear, fearing being late and a possible scolding from the Mother Superior. She crossed the hallway without incident, but something caught her attention. The huge clock at the end of the hallway read midnight, not 6 in the morning as she had thought. Immediately, a chill took over her body. She felt her trembling hands let go of the can she was holding, making a loud noise that echoed through the empty hallway. Frightened, Donna Helena ran back to the kitchen. She sat down next to the stove and remained there until dawn, trying to understand what had happened. She spent years trying to explain that experience. Could it be that I saw the spirit of an old nun? She asked herself. The doubt stayed with her throughout her life. The nun in the black habit remained a mystery. Was it an old memory of that place, a spirit, or just a figment of Donna Helena's imagination in the darkness? This is one of the stories we leave so that each person can draw their own conclusions.
During the 1990s, I lived in a nun's dormitory in a rural town to attend college and prepare for college entrance exams. The building that housed the boarding house was an old and huge building with 3 floors, which had served as a barracks, a hospital, and a school at different times. It had about 40 rooms, some individual, some shared, as well as a series of facilities such as dining rooms, TV rooms, a chapel, gardens, and administrative areas. On the same grounds there was a separate wing where the nuns lived, Because it was such an old building, its structure was almost entirely made of dark wood, with floors and stairs that creaked with every step. Even during the day, the place had a somber air, an atmosphere that seemed to hold stories. Next to the building there was an equally old church, and between the two, a 19th century cemetery. This cemetery, with its tombstones adorned with angels and sculptures, was visible from some windows on the second floor. It was not known for sure who was buried there, but it was likely that they were religious figures or members of influential families of the time. Entry was forbidden, but the sight of the place was enough to fuel the mysterious atmosphere surrounding the boarding house. As expected, stories of strange events were not uncommon, and one of the most striking involved my roommate, Estella. One night, Estella woke up wanting to go to the bathroom, something she had done countless times since moving into the hostel. However, that night, the silence seemed more oppressive, and a cold sensation ran down her spine. As she walked down the hallway to the communal bathroom, she saw something that left her paralyzed. A small, pink, childish hand emerged from one of the shower cubicles, waving at her as if calling her. Estella blinked several times, trying to convince herself that it was just her imagination, but the vision would not disappear. Frightened, she turned around and ran, but before leaving, she heard a childish laugh followed by a thin voice saying, "I'll be back." Since then, Estella swore never to go to the bathroom alone at night again. The boarding house was also full of rooms used as storage for furniture and unused objects. It was common for the employees to find these spaces completely messy, even after leaving them organized the day before. In addition, electronic equipment, such as fans, were often found turned on, even without being connected to the electricity. The mystery didn't stop there. There was a hall divided into small rooms with wooden partitions that had a sinister reputation. Most people avoided living there, but Katerina, one of the residents, liked the silence to study. One night, Katerina had a peculiar dream. A young woman appeared in her room and said she lived in the last room on the corridor. The girl said that Katerina could call her if she needed anything. Intrigued, Katerina told the dream to Diana, the housekeeper who had worked there for decades. Diana was surprised by the description, because the young woman exactly matched the appearance of a former resident who had died there when a beam fell on her years before. Katerina was shivering but never mentioned the dream again. Another strange incident occurred at the reception. Diana and Alana, one of the boarders, were talking when they saw Bettina, another resident, walk past them saying she was going to English class. A short time later, when she went up to her room, Alana saw Bettina inside, listening to music and organizing her things. Confused, Alana asked how she could be in her room if she had just left for class. Bettina said she hadn't left the room all day. They were both shocked, unable to explain how this was possible. Had they seen a doppelganger? Or was it something even more inexplicable, like a meeting between parallel dimensions? During renovations to the boarding house, the bricklayers set up a sleeping quarters there. One day, one of them was approached in the early hours of the morning by a nun who gestured for him to follow her. He thought it was an emergency and followed her, but the situation soon became strange. The nun walked quickly, following dark corridors, going up and down stairs, and disappearing around corners only to reappear soon after. The bricklayer began to question what was happening, and as he turned a final corner, he realized that the nun had completely disappeared. All the doors in the hallway were locked. The next day, he resigned and never returned. These are just some of the stories that marked the history of this boarding house. Supernatural experiences were frequent, and to this day, those who lived or worked there retain chilling memories.